Good Tuesday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. We will continue to talk Browns, talk a little Cavs as well as they're getting ready to play the Utah Jazz. So we do know 4 of the names of the guys that the Browns are interested in and talking to about their defensive coordinator position that was opened up yesterday with the firing of Joe Woods. Jim Schwartz, Brian Flores, Jared Mayo, and Sean Desai are all names that have been linked to the Browns' defensive coordinator position. Kevin Stefanski was asked about the traits that he's looking for in his next defensive coordinator.
I don't know that there's one specific set of criteria, Scott. I think we're excited about some of the people that we'll be able to talk to, and everybody's resume is going to be a little bit different, so I'm very open-minded in that regard. But just, this is a process that you got to stay true to. I want to make sure that we meet with all the candidates and understand what they're about. But I think I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, so to speak. Want to make sure that we remain true to it, trust in it, and really get to know these candidates and see how that vision fits in with what we're trying to accomplish.
And with that, let's welcome in Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle Telegram as well as BrownsZone.com. Scott, I want a guy that has an aggressive defense, and Kevin and the rest of the coaching staff is kind of cerebral. You almost need somebody that is a no-nonsense butt kicker, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily argue with that. I do think, you talk about the lack of discipline on defense and maybe a leadership void. And would it be the worst thing in the world to have a defensive coordinator that has a different personality than Stefanski and even Andrew Berry? No. I do think it's important to have somebody that at least is comfortable running the 4-3 scheme because, you're not going to change that with Myles Garrett being the linchpin over there. And then, I would like to see some experience, whether it's as a coordinator and or a head coach. I think that would be useful on the staff.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. Let's go to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, love the show, man. Long-time viewer, often caller. I seen that I read that the Browns have requested to interview Brian Flores, Gerard Mayo, and I've heard that they've set up an interview with Jim Schwartz. Now, since we've been at the beginning of the season talking about fire Joe Woods, I've been on the Brian Flores bandwagon. I was probably the first one on the show to say what about Brian Flores, and I was kind of laughed at, really. But out of those 3, who would you rather see as a defensive coordinator for the Browns? I mean, I'm sure there's probably going to be other candidates, but if you had to pick one of those 3, who would you like to see as the Browns' next defensive coordinator? Go Browns. Oof, oof, oof.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Scott, I have a choice, but I'll let you go first.
I would probably say Jim Schwartz out of those candidates because he was a head coach. He's been a defensive coordinator for a long, long time. Started his NFL career as a scout in Cleveland. I think he has some fire in him. He runs the 4-3 with the wide 9, which Myles Garrett would, excels in. That's what he does best. He also is really smart, and I think he would probably fit in with, the Berries and DePodestas and Stefanskis in the organization. So I would lean toward him. I'm not opposed to Flores. I just don't know if this is the next place he wants to stop.
Yeah, I'm with you with Flores. I'd be fine. But, yeah, Jim Schwartz is a guy that I had kind of been thinking about the more you hear about him. He stepped away from really good defenses in Philadelphia, and then the last 2 years has been like an assistant without an assistant head coach in Tennessee. But, yeah, I think his personality would fit what the Browns need as well. So, Andrew Berry, and if the Browns are thinking that they need to change their thinking relative to the defensive tackle position.
Quite honestly, we will always try and match the personnel to the schematic vision for the coach. So
our coaches do a really good job of telling us what they need in a particular scheme or a particular defense. Certainly that position in particular. As Kevin selects a defensive coordinator, we'll link up with that individual and make sure that we're searching for individuals that have the traits and skills necessary to perform their job within that.
So, Scott, my answer to that would be yes.
Yeah, it was interesting. Almost it almost felt like Andrew was, or it made me think, well, okay, did Joe Woods really want undersized, like unproven D tackles? And obviously not the unproven part, but maybe Woods' scheme was, hey, was be really quick and, we'll be good in the second or good on the edges. I don't know. It always felt to me organizationally like the philosophy was you're not going to spend a bunch on D tackles. But maybe if the new guy says, hey, we can't, my scheme needs at least one, run stuffing tackle. That's what I need. At least Barry says that they'll be, open to that and then adjust accordingly.
Yeah, and again, they need to do some sort of tweaking in the middle of that defense because it did not work whatsoever. One thing that did work quite well, the edge. Let's take a look. Pro Football Focus, top-graded edge rushers. And the reason you see the picture of Myles Garrett is he was the top one, ahead of Micah Parsons, Nick Bosa, Max Crosby, and you see the list. But Myles Garrett with a 92.6 grade, a full point better than Micah Parsons. And, Scott, you hear Browns fans talking, and you think Myles had a mediocre year. He had a really good year.
Yeah, he did. There was another stat out there that said he was had the second highest edge win rate behind Parsons. It was real close. We've talked about it a million times. I think Myles gets a bit of a bad rap around here. I think expectations are too high for him, and I get it. He's paid a ton of money. He was the number one overall pick, and he says, I want to be Defensive Player of the Year. I want to bring championships. I want to go to the Hall of Fame. I get it. The focus is really bright on Myles Garrett. I also think he plays like a top 5 defensive player in the league, and you can't ask for much more than that. Now, the car accident, I can criticize him for that. The fact that he was benched for the first 3 plays of the Saints game, I can criticize him for that. But on the field, I think he plays hard, and I think he affects the game a ton, and he deserves to be acknowledged that way.
Yeah, and I think if you tailor the scheme a little bit more to be aggressive and take some chances, it's going to make him even a little bit more effective. If you're a little bit more aggressive with the other parts of that defense, I think you make Myles Garrett more effective. That's why I want them to be more aggressive. All right, the question becomes, you have Myles Garrett's big contract, Deshaun Watson's big contract, Denzel Ward's big contract. Will the Browns have enough flexibility to improve the roster where they need to?
We will have, more than enough in terms of like resources, picks, dollars, cap space, to fortify the roster in the areas that we need to.
And Scott, I'm going to trust Andrew Berry because he knows the salary cap ins and outs, and I'm sure they've got a plan.
I do too. Now, he's not going to say, hey, this contract handcuffed us and we're not going to make any moves or not be able to make any moves. But I do think they have enough cap space. That's why they rolled over a bunch from this year. People were wondering why they weren't signing some veteran guys at D tackle or receiver. And I think a lot of that was they wanted to roll over the cap space to next year, knowing things get tight. But having said that, you have to hit more, right? Your average has to be higher now in who you draft and who you sign in free agency. You can't afford the misses that maybe you could when you had all the salary cap space in the world and all the draft picks, because now both are limited commodities. So you better be better in your talent acquisition.
Yeah, and what you're gambling on is that your high-end guys play well enough to kind of elevate the play of those other guys. All right, before we go to break, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason one more time.
Hey, I seen today that the Browns fired Joe Woods. How did Mike Prefer survive? He should be gone just as well because his special teams was horrible all season long. Do you know if he'll be gone in days to come or if they're still combined? Go Browns.
Scott, we were talking about this beforehand, and there's no, when asked directly about it, Kevin Stefanski kind of evaded the question. So to be determined?
Yeah, I think so. I was surprised how Stefanski handled that, right? He could have easily said, hey, we're bringing Mike back. We'll evaluate the rest of the staff. I mean, defensive position coach-wise, like, the other defensive assistants besides Woods, a lot of that will depend on who they hire as defensive coordinator. Stefanski said he wants to bring some of those guys back, but, whoever gets hired will have say in that staff, at least to some degree. But when it comes to Prefer, that's a Kevin Stefanski call. And, my thought is that if he was going to be fired, he would have been fired alongside Joe Woods. But I no longer feel 100% about that.
Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we will head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk a little Kevin Stefanski, a little Deshaun Watson. Sports for CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrick from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegraph, as well as brownzone.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Let's judge Kevin Stefanski with checks and X's. Let's put a check mark for everything we see good in him, and let's put an X for everything we see that's bad. And whichever one has the most, so let's go with that. If he has more bad than good, let's get rid of him. If he has more good than bad, let's keep him, just like everybody else. And emotion-wise, I'm looking at Pittsburgh game, and I'm looking at the interaction between Mike Tomlin and his players, and I see none with Kevin Stefanski. And he's just not it. I don't want to start all over like everybody, but this isn't it. You have to get rid of this whole crew of coaches and get a whole new crew. Get started because it's coming anyway. Thanks. Bye.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Scott, a coach has to be who he is. And, you know, the minute you try to be something you're not, players, anybody's going to sniff you out, but especially professional athletes.
I think that's true. I also think it's a little bit unfair to say he has no emotion and doesn't relate to the players at all. I mean, I've seen plenty of times when he's high-five guys and hug guys, and you see him talk to, you know, if you're in the locker room or, you know, on the field, you see that kind of interaction. Now, yeah, nobody can debate that he's a Mike Tomlin kind of personality. He's not, and that's why Mike Tomlin's special. Right? I think if you polled the players in the league, Mike Tomlin might be number one on who they'd want to play for. So that might be an unfair comparison for Kevin Stefanski. I also think that that's not the reason you would move on from him. You know, the reason is he losing games for reasons that are in his control. And, you know, he's a head coach, so, yeah, you'd say everything's in his control. But, you know, I think he deserves one more year. I think the pressure will be on next year. But I still think there's a pretty high ceiling for Stefanski. And that starts with, I think he's smart. I think the even-keel personality is the right one to have for this job. And I think he knows how to design an offense.
Yeah. Again, I would agree on all of those points, especially let's see what he has with the guy that he wants as a quarterback for an entire season, or at least for the better part of a season. Well, Andrew Berry was asked why he was sure that Kevin Stefanski was the guy for the Browns.
I think we have a really strong, head coach, and I think he proved it his very first year. He's smart. He's good with our guys. He's creative. But the reality is, we're all looking to make the necessary changes and modifications to make sure that, we can reach our goals and have a really productive, 2023. And that takes all of us, right? The head coach, he's out in front. He's the leader of the organization, and he bears a lot of burden and responsibility. And he gets, really, all the blame when it's not necessarily all him. And our job is to make sure that we support the head coach, put him in the right environment to be successful. And it takes all of us. It takes all of us. And we know we have a good one in Kev.
What about the attributes, though? What have you seen in Schrader to say, okay, this is the guy that can take?
I think his intelligence, his ability to relate to players, his creativity, and his ability as a teacher.
And Scott, those are a lot of the things that you pointed out when I asked you. The other thing I would say is it's been a while since you've had a general manager and a head coach that they appear to like each other, not just get along. They appear to like each other. That is usually a good sign for an organization.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think they, kind of cut from the same cloth as far as, their philosophies and even their personalities to some degree. When you look at, this marriage, and it dawned on, we were talking about it in the media room late last night. I mean, the Haslam's have never brought a coach or a GM back for a fourth season. I'm not sure GM's come back for a third season. So, this is a little bit of a milestone there, which is sad, organizationally. But that's the stability that the Haslams and the Browns were craving. And they think they found it with these two guys. And then I think, you need to throw Chief Strategy Officer Paul DePodesta into the equation. And it would have to, obviously they're not ready to move on from this, and they want the continuity and they want the stability, which is why I think they're so desperate for it to work, because they feel like they got it right. But at some point, then you might have to change your mind and say, we didn't get it right. And then you're just starting over again. Yeah,
you need to see more than 7 or 8 wins in a season to feel like you have it right, or to prove that you have it right. How do you think the Browns' offense could change next year?
I think it could be dramatic. And I asked Deshaun Watson that, and he said, yeah, it's going to look totally different. And then that's when he gave that quote about talking to Kevin Stefanski man-to-man. And he said, it's not negative, but it certainly felt like they were going to have a serious talk about the direction of the offense. And you started to see it change, when Deshaun Watson returned December 4th from what the Browns did with Jacoby Brissett. You saw more quarterback runs. You designed quarterback runs. You saw more zone reads. You saw more RPOs. Now, not a ton of them, but you saw them sprinkled in. You certainly saw more scrambling from Deshaun Watson, which, Brissett did a little bit of that, but not the same as, Watson's extending plays for a long, long time. So I just think we're going to see more of that. And then the question is, how do you find the balance with the pass run? How do you find the balance between shotgun and under center? But I certainly think, and I really feel like this after talking to Watson yesterday, is that his fingerprints are going to be all over this offense. And a lot of it's going to be, okay, here's what I like to do. Let's figure out how to make everything else work around that with Chubb. And not that he's going to take over, for Kevin Stefanski, but I think he will have a lot of say. And then it's up to Stefanski to kind of balance, okay, how do we run out of these formations that he likes? And so, yeah, I think it's going to look different. And I think you'll probably see, fewer runs overall, which, will upset plenty of fans that's all they complain about.
Well, the thing is, though, I mean, if you're committing to a franchise quarterback, that's what you do. You design. There's a reason you're paying him guaranteed $230 million, because you're going to design the offense around him. Watson also talked yesterday about helping the Browns reach their potential with all the talent on this team.
The biggest thing is really just mastering the minors and doing the little things. If we can do the little things, starting with this team, I think the big things can happen. And that might, sound kind of cliche, but it's the truth. You got to do the little things. We have a young team that is still learning how to play on this level, and we have a lot of guys that's still managing to know that week in and week out, every team is good. Every team is getting paid to do what they do, and every team wants to win. And, and then that leadership role of just really bringing that confidence to everyone that, every time we step on that field, we can win the game, and we're going to win the game, and not just hoping that somebody make a play, that everyone can make that play. You just got to be ready for those moments and those opportunities. You got to visualize those. You got to manifest those opportunities in those moments. So when those moments come, you can take full advantage of it and make those plays.
And Scott, we're not going to have an idea what kind of leader Deshaun Watson is until next year. You can't miss the first 11 games of a season and then walk into the locker room and I'm the leader.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And you saw him, when he got here last year, he would take steps, and he took the guys to the Bahamas, and that was part of it. But he was pretty adamant about how next year he's going to be the guy. He's going to take leadership of this team. And I'm working on a story right now. It feels like something the Browns need. It doesn't have to be from Watson, but there was a bit of a leadership void this year, especially from a vocal leader. And he's also said he's shy, kind of by nature. So, maybe that's not, his kind of fallback, but I think he knows that he needs to do it, and it comes with the job. It comes with the salary. But yeah, it's interesting. And he talked about the little things, and that's another theme when we talk about this season. Guys yesterday really said the little things turned into big things and showed up on the field, and that was part of the reason they failed to meet expectations and they lost a bunch of close games, and they have to address that this offseason.
Well, we've talked a little bit about the offense looking different, and it will definitely involve Nick Chubb. Chubb talked about the offense and adjusting to Deshaun Watson as the quarterback, as well as that balance between run and pass.
The chemistry wasn't really there, but something we can work on for sure. And when things are great, things are great. That's we got to get to that all the time. And that'll just take time. And hopefully be good, be better for us, kind of keeping defense off balance and not knowing what to expect. Who knows, too little right now, but hopefully I think it will work in our favor.
And again, I think Nick Chubb is going to see fewer carries, but he's going to see fewer guys in the box, and you're going to see some. I think you're going to see the same amount of explosive plays from Nick Chubb.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, obviously that would be the desire. And I thought Joe Batoni was really interesting talking about that same topic, and he said the same thing. He said, I think we'll probably come out throwing early and try to spread defenses out, and then if we get 6 in the box, we'll be able to run Nick Chubb, right? So I think it'll look different, like we talked about, and maybe even early in games, you'll just see an emphasis on throwing, probably different personnel packages, and then more of Nick Chubb later and kind of taking advantage of what the defense does there. But, if you come out, if teams think, it's like when the teams play the Chiefs, right? You're worried about Patrick Mahomes. You have to be so scared about that, and you can't put that second safety in the box. You have to spread out. And then if the Chiefs want to run it, okay. But the Chiefs don't have a guy like Nick Chubb. So I think it'll be an adjustment. Joe Batoni said it would be an adjustment. I think Chubb did. I think fans will have to adjust. But if the result is you're explosive through the pass and the run, I mean, that's what they're trying to get to.
Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegraph, as well as BrownsZone.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk some more offense and analytics. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegraph, as well as BrownsZone.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Dave, as a longtime Browns fan, the present state of the team scares me to death for the future. We have an owner who has the money but has no clue how to run a successful football team. He brings in DiPodesto and Barry. They want to create a high-powered passing attack, so they bring in Kevin Stefanski. Not just as an offensive coordinator, but as the head coach. Some say Stefanski knows how to call plays, but he has shown he has no clue how to be that strong leader, doing and making the strong decisions to lead this team to be very successful. The owner again spends money and gets his franchise quarterback, Deshaun Watson. They fire their defensive coordinator, but they keep Stefanski as the head coach. The team is only as strong as its leader. In football, you must have all 3 phases of a team running smoothly, and you need that leader or coach who controls all 3 phases to be strong and successful. Until we find that head coach or leader who can lead everyone together, we will continue to be the same old Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Scott, again, we kind of touched on it before. Let's see. There hasn't been a normal offseason. Now, it sounds like an excuse, but you had the really bad COVID year, the sort of COVID year, and then the circus with Deshaun Watson. Let's see what happens with a normal offseason and a quarterback that he feels is elite.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. And, leadership is such an intangible, right? Like, it's really hard to quantify. And you need so many things to not only be a successful head coach, but a successful organization, right? If your coach is a great leader, but he can't design plays and doesn't have coordinators who can, then it doesn't matter, right? If you have all that and your GM can't accrue talent, then that doesn't matter. Like, so much goes into it. And, that's why if you get the quarterback right, that solves a lot of problems. If you get the coach / play caller right, that solves a lot of problems. And it just goes down the list. And I get it. I get why fans are frustrated with Kevin Stefanski. And I can't guarantee them that he is the right guy and that things will be better next year. I just think there are positives to him as a head coach and keeping him. And, I know a lot of people want him fired. I think that it's not a mistake to bring him back for next year. But like we said, there's going to be a lot on the line next year because, it's hard to get a fifth season if you only make the playoffs one time.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I would agree with you. All right, let's take a look at the highest graded Browns offensive players for 2022. And not a surprise. Nick Chubb, number 1, over 90. Joel Bitonio, 87.6. Jacoby Brissett is the 3rd ranked offensive player. Cooper, again, another really good acquisition by Andrew Berry. And Ethan Posick, the center who filled in for the injured Nick Harris. Do you think they try to re-sign Ethan Posick? What are your thoughts there? That's kind of a tricky one.
Yeah, I certainly do. I mean, it's hard to ignore those numbers, right? And I saw some other stats today that have him, I think, in the top 5 or top 10 at least, as a run blocker and a pass blocker. And there's no guarantee that. I mean, your other option is Nick Harris, right? And he's coming off, knee surgery that cost him the entire season. He's never really played a bunch in this league, right? The first couple of years, he sat behind J.C. Tretter. So he would have been a question mark this year anyway, and I know the Browns had a lot of confidence in him. But, you know what you have in Ethan Posick. To me, he's a proven commodity now. Not only what he did this year, but he's played in the league for, 6 or 7 years. So I like the idea of re-signing him. I don't think it'll be cost prohibitive. Now, that would be what the deal breaker is, right? If he wants a ton of money, he can find it somewhere else. Maybe it's difficult for the Browns to match that given, the commitments they have across the line and across the roster. But I would certainly think that they would, and I know that he would be interested in coming back.
All right, let's take a look. Jedrick Wills, so 4th year in the league. 8th most penalties at his position, allowed 6 sacks, 41 pressures. The run grade on PFF, not great. Browns would save $3.29 million if he is released prior to June 1st. Question would be, where do you go? Andrew Berry talked about Jedrick Wills this year.
Like I said, I think Jed definitely took strides this year. I think, like many young players, there are still areas where he can be more consistent. But we definitely thought he took a step forward this season.
Scott, again, where do you go? And I think a lot of the frustration is he was the 10th pick in the draft. He's not playing like the 10th pick in the draft. I also don't think he's playing like, one of the worst left tackles in the league.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Now, I should preface everything I say with I could be wrong, but there's no way that they're cutting Wills before next season. I think they're committed to him. He's a number 10 draft pick 3 years ago. They think he got better this year. He stayed healthy until, right at the end, like the second last play against the Steelers when he got rolled up, which last year, 2021, he did not stay healthy, and that affected him. Now, so I just can't imagine them cutting bait with him. They don't have an option on the roster. They'd have to go get one at a premium position. And like you said, Dave, he has not been worth the number 10 pick. There's no argument there. And when you look at what Wirfs and Tampa's doing, and Thomas and with the Giants, guys from his draft class, they're rated highly. The pick looks even worse. But I don't think he's as bad as people think he is. Now, I have questions about the way he finishes plays. And if you watch him, you probably don't even have to study him hard, but if you do study him hard like I try to, you see plays where he doesn't finish. And he's gotten better at that. And I talked with him about it at the end of the season. He said, I've gotten better, but I still need to get even better. He's inconsistent, but I think he has the talent necessary. The Browns don't give him a lot of help. He's out there one-on-one, and I think he holds up more times than not. I get the frustration of fans, but I think there's a high ceiling for him, and it's just a matter of whether he can achieve it or not. And I feel pretty certain he's going to get a fourth season to see if he can make that jump that you need him to make.
Another thing that fans keep clamoring about is analytics. There's people seem to have the idea that analytics is the root of a lot of the reason that the Browns don't run if they don't like the run, or they pass when they. Andrew Berry talked about analytics and its role with the Browns.
I think it's natural to look at really every area in the operation when you're sitting here not playing playoff football, right? And I think, if by the line of questioning, it's no different than us internally, where you want to make sure you put your finger on every area where you can have improvement or push to make sure that we ultimately get the results that are desired. That being said, again, if it was, this league's so competitive and the margins are so small. And if there was just one simple fix, if it was like, okay, well, just do this or don't do that, our jobs would be a lot easier. That I can assure you. Data is something that's helpful, but ultimately we have to apply it correctly and make the right decisions in a number of different areas. Like I just said to Tony, it's not a silver bullet. It's not the only method that we'll use to make the major strategic decisions, whether it's in the front office or on the field. But we feel good about having that as a part of our toolkit, ultimately to get the team where it needs to be.
And again, Scott, if they're not looking at trends and those kind of things, I think they're missing the boat.
There's no doubt. And I really hope that people heard that, heard Andrew Berry say that and listened to his explanation and take it in. I hope I haven't been part of the media that's, knocked analytics where now fans use that is, kind of their default for everything that goes wrong. It's because they're analytically driven. I don't think that's the case. And I think Andrew Berry is correct. You should use all the data you have. Now, should that be the only thing that goes into a decision? No. And I don't think it is for them. Now, we can argue whether or not they rely on it too much for certain decisions. Some jump to mind. Like, why would they have drafted Cody Kessler in the third round? That at the time it felt analytically driven, and obviously it was a disaster. So I'm sure there's plenty of examples of that. But I think there's also examples of, hey, it makes sense to go on it from 4th and 1 at the 35. Like, the numbers just prove it out. And I just think that I think fans look at it the wrong way, and now they have this kind of mental block about analytics, and I just don't think that's correct or fair.
Yeah, no, I would agree that it's like football is physical and analytics is math. It's kind of the mindset, and all analytics does is backs up your reasoning. There's no problem with having as much information as possible. Like, we should all have that about everything, and I also think there's no problem with being smart, right? Like, now I think it's popular to say, oh, he went to Penn and he went to Harvard and he went to Harvard. Like, all right, I get it that not everybody went to Harvard, but that's not a bad thing. Like, being smart is good, and it can relate to the football field as well. See, we are breaking new ground here on Sports for CLE. Scott and I will be back one more segment. We will talk a little bit more. Deshaun Watson tells us about expectations for him. We'll also hear from Kevin Stefanski. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle, Telegram, BrownZone.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I've been a Cleveland Brown fan since 1963. I'll soon be 70 years old, and I'm glad this season is finally over. Another season of expectations, but it turned into aggravation as usual. I think Jimmy Haslam should probably clean house, but who could we get that was any better? We have to make some big changes, and I don't know what they'll be. My other thought is there's no way that we can win in Pittsburgh with the way the officials call the game. They held Myles Garrett all game long and never threw a flag. Face mask tackle on our quarterback, no call. And it's always been that way, and I guess it'll never change. Go Browns, like your show. Thank you.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Scott, again, the fan base is frustrated because you made the playoffs, and the last 2 years you've regressed.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And, we've talked about that. I think keeping these guys is fine right now. But if you did want to fire them, like many fans do, it's a legitimate question. Like, who would you go get, right? That's not a reason for not making a move ever, right? And the Browns did make a significant move by firing defensive coordinator Joe Woods. Like, after missing the playoffs 2 years in a row, they decided significant change was necessary, and that's number one. Like, that's the significant change that they're going to make. But you do wonder, okay, like, would the Browns be able to get their top candidates? And you just don't know. And the Hasms have obviously shown to this point that they haven't been able to hire the right people. So that's certainly a question. I do think it's interesting, the fan talking about the officiating. And, I'm not saying he's wrong. There were plenty of calls that seemed missed. There was a bad roughing that called that went against the Steelers as well. It seemed kind of like a makeup call for that missed face mask on, Deshaun Watson sack. But that's, I get text messages from one of my buddies all the time on this chain. Like, every week it's killing the officials. And I just have a hard time imagining that the officials are really out to get the Browns, and then they get so many worse calls than the rest of the league. I just think when you're a fan, that tends to you tend to notice when they go against you.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, those guys are playing really fast, really physical, and they don't have replay and the tight lenses that we get to see the game from on TV. All right, Deshaun Watson talked about fans' expectations for him to get back to where he was in 2020. Are they fair? Is he worried about it? Here's Watson.
Well, first, I don't remember me saying it was unfair. I never said anything about that. Whatever expectations people hold for me, it's always fair. People have their own opinions. People have their expectations. I said for myself, I wasn't going to come in thinking that, I'm the best quarterback and I'm just going to walk in and win the MVP. I knew that I'm a realist. I know the reality of this game. I know how hard it is to be able to perform consistently, and taking the time off and then stepping into a new situation, that was going to be tough to do. I'm not saying that I can't do it and I wasn't going to be able to do it, but as a realist, I knew that it was going to be some challenges and some ups and downs. So for people to sit here and say that I said that it was unfair for people to criticize me, no. This is a fair game. This is the sport of business, and you got to come out and perform. But for me to be able to go to this expectations and for 2023, yeah, the expectations should be high because we have the talent, we have the potential, and we have the people and the pieces to be able to, meet those expectations. And we got to make sure we doing everything we can do consistently each and every week to try to meet those expectations. Of course.
And Scott, I loved hearing that from him.
Yeah, the focus on next year and saying he's embracing those, I think, is important. And I also think, and Deshaun laid it out there, he did not expect to come back and dominate in these final 6 games. And, obviously everybody has their own individual opinion. I guess my expectations probably higher for him than his were, and maybe I underestimated the rust from those 700 days, right? Maybe, it'll be a game or two, but it really took all 6, and the rust was still not gone. You could tell that against the Steelers, and part of it's the Steelers defense, but he just didn't always look comfortable back there in the pocket, even when he had time and he threw those 2 interceptions. So, he knew that it would be a rough road, and it was, and that's why they weren't able to make that, run to the playoffs, because they would have needed him to go like 5-1, and instead they went 3-3.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I had some unrealistic expectations as well, 700 days off, new system, new teammates. It did look a little disjointed. As always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Scott.
Thanks, Dave.
Scott Petrak, make sure you read him. Illyria Chronicle, Telegram, as well as brownzone.com on the internet. Always really good stuff. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We turn our attention to the Cavs getting ready to face the Utah Jazz. Sam Amico from hoopswire.com straight ahead on Sports4CLE.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Welcome back to Sports 4 CLE. We turn our attention to the Cleveland Cavaliers will officially be across the midway point of the NBA season with tonight's game in Utah. Donovan Mitchell was named Player of the Week for the Eastern Conference for the week that wrapped up. You see the Cavs were 3-1, averaged 37.7 points, over almost 8 assists, 5 rebounds. Western Conference Player of the Week, a guy named LeBron James. We've heard of him too. Let's welcome in Sam Amico, hoopswire.com. Sam, Donovan Mitchell just continues to elevate his game and play well. The 71-point performance was pretty impressive. He continues to be one of the best players in the NBA.
Yeah, when you score 71 points in one game, you tend to get Player of the Week honors. But, it's really been remarkable. You consider he came to the Cavs as a 3-time All-Star when with the Jazz, which, was a pretty good run there. Now he's averaging a career high, almost 29 points per game. Really has, willed the Cavs to victory on a few occasions, including that 71-point game. They've won, entering Utah, they've won 4 of 5. So it's been quite a nice trade for the Cavs. It's worked out very well.
So getting ready to play the Utah Jazz. So it's a homecoming for Donovan Mitchell. We also know that Colin Sexton, one of the guys that the Cavs traded to get Donovan Mitchell, is not going to be able to play. He's out with a hamstring injury. Cavs, as you see, will be without Rubio, Windler, and Wade, which they have been. So it's homecoming, though, for Donovan Mitchell. What do you expect the reception to be, and what do you expect from Donovan Mitchell?
Well, as far as the reception, you would expect that there would be, a lot of cheers. He wasn't a guy who demanded a trade. Utah traded him willingly because they were going in another direction. And he's a class individual, and always gave his all there. They had some nice runs there when he was with the Jazz, obviously. A couple years ago, finishing with the best record in the Western Conference. Never did reach the finals. But he's saying, he's not sure what to expect. He hopes it's more cheers than boos. And I would think that would be the case. But, as far as his performance, I would expect that he's probably going to, without forcing things, try to have a nice showing, which clearly isn't very hard for him. It doesn't take a game against the Jazz for him to get motivated and have a nice showing. So I think there'll be a little extra incentive for him, as well as for the Cavs overall, to try to get him a win in his own stomping grounds.
All right, so I'm putting you down for somewhere between 30 and 71 points for Donovan Mitchell.
That would be accurate.
All right. Cavs are 26-15, so it's exactly halfway through the NBA season. They've already played 41 of the 82, so tonight will be the 42nd game. 4th place in the East, just 3 games behind the Celtics. Now, 7 of the next 10. A lot of math there, but 7 of the next 10 are on the road. How important is this next stretch of games for the Cavs if they want to continue to be one of those top 4 that gets a home game?
Yeah, you're going to have to win on the road if you're going to be among the elite in your conference. There's just no question about that. And like you said, Dave, we're now entering the second half of the season officially, 41 games left. And I think the Cavs have done okay on the road. They've not been great on the road by any stretch, but they've done all right. When you compare them to some of the other contenders in both conferences, their road record's about the same as some of those others. So, obviously you want to keep that going. beat the teams you should beat, the non-playoff contenders on the road, win those games, steal a couple against good teams on the road, and take care of business at home. And they've been excellent at home. So, if you can just keep pace with these other, the Celtics, the Bucks, the Sixers, obviously the Nets have been really hot. Those teams are teams that have done fairly well on the road. So in order to keep pace, you've got to do fairly well on the road. And like you said, this very important stretch. This isn't the end of this trip. They've got Utah, and then they've got Portland, and then they've got Minnesota, all on the road, and then come home for New Orleans, and then you've got some more road games after that. So, yeah, just play your style of basketball, stay motivated, don't come out flat, because you can get past that at home. If you come out flat, lacking energy on the road, that's tough to do, as we saw in San Antonio earlier this year. So, yeah, you want to split these road games if you can throughout the second half of the season.
So let's take a look at this. This is from Cav Notes. The Cavs have held opponents under 100 points 14 times. That's by far the most in the NBA. Second is Milwaukee at 8, so almost double any other team. That's how important that defense is. And the most games winning by 10-plus points, Cavs also leading the NBA with 17. Grizzlies and Pelicans a game behind them at 16. Sam, is it troubling? There are games where the Cavs should handle somebody and they don't. Is that a factor of being kind of a young team and having to learn? In the NBA, if you don't come ready to play, it's going to be a long night.
Yeah, and that is part of being a young team. Part of that is just human nature. A couple of nights ago, the Milwaukee Bucks were hammered at home by the struggling Charlotte Hornets. You just, sometimes it's tough to get up for those games. And guess what? Like you said, it's the NBA. It's going to come back to haunt you. The good stat there is, to me, the stat, with under 100 points, a lot. Ralph Lawler, the old former play-by-play man with the Clippers, long time there, his philosophy used to be the first team to 100 wins. Well, statistically, that's often the case in the NBA. So if you're holding the other team to under 100 points, odds are you've got the win. So there's 14 games right there that the Cavaliers won, 26-15 entering the second half of the season. That counts for a lot. So when they're at their best defensively, which is good, because that's what you got to do in the playoffs. Game slows down a lot, and when they're at their best defensively, they match up with anybody in the league.
All right, let's take a look at the Week 13 NBA Power Rankings from NBA.com. So number 1, they have Denver, a team that the Cavs lost to on the road, Denver. Number 2, Boston. 3 is Brooklyn. Kevin Durant is banged up and injured, going to miss a month. 4 is Memphis. 5 is Cavs. So, and again, the thing that jumps out, the offensive rating is 113.9. That's 10th best. So they're top 10 in offense. Defensive rating, 109.0, which is tops in the NBA. So, and Sam, we constantly hear J.B. Bickerstaff talking about defensive intensity. That's the identity, and I mean that's something that they have to buy into if they're going to do what they want to do this year.
Well, there's no problem with them scoring points, right? I mean, you've got Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. Even though he doesn't score a ton of points, is usually pretty efficient. He'll get you 14 to 16 a game. Karis LeVert, Kevin Love, Chetty sometimes. Even Isaac Okoro the other night hit 4 threes. So there's not any problem scoring points. Really, that's never an issue. The defense clearly isn't an issue either, but J.B. Bickerstaff wants to keep hammering that message home because, look, it's easy for us to just outscore people, but you're not going to win big games that way. You're going to win big games with your defensive intensity, with your hustle, with your ability to do the little things. Because everything else, when it comes to putting points on the board, relatively easy for this group, So it's important that, yes, you continue what JB Bickerstaff is continuing to talk about, which is, bend your knees, shuffle your feet, get stops, and everything else will take care of itself.
Sam Amico from hoopswire.com and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, some names that are linked to the Cavs with potential trades. Sports4CLE talking Cavs. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery, Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Cavs with Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Trade deadline in the NBA is February 9th, a little under a month away. The Cavs have been linked to some wings that can shoot threes. Some names that have been linked to the Cavs: Tim Hardaway, Bojan Bogdanovic, Alex Burke, Luke Kennard, and Doug McDermott. Again, this is from an article Sam wrote for hoopswire.com. Sam, when you listen to those names, Hardaway is a guy that, has like $33 million, I believe, plus over 2 years on his contract. What kind of jumps out at you with that? What do you think the Cavs are looking for? What is the likelihood that they will add some three-point shooting in that wing presence?
I would say it's probably around 50%. I mean, they're certainly making the effort to try to find that type of player that can add perimeter shooting. What they don't want to do, obviously, is, gut the roster to make it happen. They're having plenty of success right now, and you don't really want to shake things up too much. So, look, the Hardaway thing is up to the Cavs. Dallas has made him widely available. And it pretty much seems like if the Cavs want him, they could get him. Now, again, like you said, Dave, $34 million left on his contract from this year and next year. A veteran player who has been, he was in the Western Conference Finals with the Mavericks last year. So he's a guy who's a veteran, battle-tested. It's just, what would the Cavs have to surrender? I think, obviously Karis LeVert's contract would help that deal. But I think right now the Cavs think that LeVert's the better overall player, so they don't necessarily want to give him up just to add additional three-point shooting. What Hardaway brings, he and LeVert are both shooting about 36% on threes. It's just Hardaway takes twice as many a game. So that's where you say, okay, this guy is a three-point shooter. I would think right now, you never know what Kobe Altman's going to do, so it's hard to predict. But I would think that they would go for a lower level trade. Somebody like Doug McDermott with the Spurs, who would cost the Cavs a lot less. You may not even have to shake up your roster very much. You might even be able to send them some, end of the bench guys or something along those lines, some second round picks to get a player like McDermott, veteran guy. Who you can you can count on to come in and hit some threes every game. So I would think it would be more of a lower level deal like that if the Cavs do pull off a trade. That said, Dave, I didn't predict that they would go out and get Donovan Mitchell either. So, like I said, the president of basketball operations, Kobe Altman, is always working the phones and sometimes surprises not just Cleveland fans, but the entire league.
Along those lines, so we mentioned it's a midway point in the NBA. the folks that cover the NBA regularly filled out a survey. So this is NBA Media Survey. Based on what you've seen so far, which team made the best overall personnel moves last summer? And Cleveland, number one at 67%, Utah at 10%, Boston and Denver third, 7% each. Sam, that's the Donovan Mitchell. That's the only personnel move they made. So the overwhelming majority of folks that cover the NBA regularly feel like the Cavs won that trade significantly.
When you make a deal, you not only want to get a star player, but you want him to fit. And that's why the Cavs won this, have won this, off-season trade poll. It's not just because Donovan Mitchell is a star player, but he's raised his level of play in his new location, and the Cavs have raised their level of play as well. So that's what makes a winning trade. It's nice. I think Utah, you said they were second. They got a nice player in Markkanen who's having a career year, and Sexton, when he's healthy, has done a nice job for them. So, if you really look at that, it's very rare that both teams win a trade. But I would say the Cavs clearly have a definite advantage over the Jazz. But the Jazz, second place, that makes sense. But it just seems like if you're making a trade, that's what you want. You got what you wanted if you're the Jazz, and you really got what you wanted if you're the Cavs.
Well, along those lines, same survey from NBA Media. Who has been the best shooting guard so far this season? And again, Donovan Mitchell, overwhelming choice by the folks that cover the NBA regularly. 62%. Devin Booker, really good shooting guard for the Suns at 17. Brown and Tatum from the Celtics, both at 7. Yeah, and that goes back to your fit. He even said he's more comfortable, and that really has kind of allowed his game to elevate even to a higher level. And he's a 3-time All-Star, so it's pretty rare.
It would make sense because he had some nice teammates in Utah, so this isn't a shot at them. But Donovan Mitchell, we have to give Darius Garland some credit in Donovan Mitchell's rise in Cleveland, because Garland creates so many more opportunities for Mitchell. Listen, Mitchell gets a lot on his own, but he hasn't played with a player like Darius Garland in the backcourt. That never happened in Utah. Darius Garland was an all-star last season too. And just the fact that you can't key so much on Mitchell, and if you do, then you're going to get burnt by Darius Garland, I think has really helped Mitchell not only raise his scoring average, but just be, more of an all-around player in every facet, because he just isn't facing the same type of defenses as he had to in Utah. And the great thing about Mitchell is even if you do double team him, it doesn't even seem to bother him this year. He's just so fluid and smooth, and his three-point shooting is excellent. So, yeah, it makes sense that he would be the best shooting guard in the NBA this season.
All right, this is an interesting one. Again, the same NBA midseason media survey from NBA.com. Which teams have the most promising young core? This one's kind of interesting. So Memphis, the Grizzlies, number one. It's obviously Ja Morant, 43%. Orlando at number 2. New Orleans at number 3. And the Cavs down at number 4 at 10%. So I was a little surprised by that. You're more of a big picture NBA guy. Take me through what the thinking is there.
Well, I'm not real sure. I can see Memphis being one. I would think that it would really be between Memphis and the Cavs. New Orleans, obviously, very nice young core led by Zion Williamson. If he can stay on the floor, which seems to be a big question mark. Orlando, they're young, but I don't know that they're more promising than the Cavs. Sometimes teams are young, but that doesn't mean they're promising. So I don't know where that came from. Paulo Banchero, the number 1 overall pick, is a very nice player for them. Franz Wagner, and Suggs and some of those other guys are nice players for the Magic. But I think if you look, they're not that much younger than the Cavs. I mean, guys, when you're talking about Darius Garland and Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, so I have a hard time giving the edge to Orlando over the Cavs there. But I think if you're looking at 1 through 12, yeah, Orlando is probably much younger than the Cavs just because everybody on their team is young other than Terrence Ross. So I certainly think the Cavs deserve to be up higher just based on Garland and Mobley alone. And, look, that's a prediction thing. So everybody has a right to their opinion. But right now the Cavs are showing on the court. Not only are we, promising, but we're getting it done right now.
Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. As always, Sam, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me, and we will chat at you soon.
Appreciate it as always. Sam Amico, hoopswire.com. Make sure you check him out. Great stuff with the Cavs and the NBA as a whole as well. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.